Today I wanted to talk about one of the first anime slash manga that I ever really got into, and it is called The Seven Deadly Sins. This series kind of has a reputation for not being that great. I feel like it gets memed on a lot. Rightfully so. I don't think this is the greatest piece of media ever created, but I do find this story very fun and interesting, and some of the characters are really deep. A lot of the relationships I'm very fond of, and I really just wanted to talk about the series. So The Seven Deadly Sins is a manga written and illustrated by the same person, by Nakaba Suzuki. He had like 6 other series before this one really took off. I think he had 2 others prior to this one that were published in Shonen Jump. I think one was Shonen Jump and one was Shonen Sunday. But Seven Deadly Sins is really popular, and I feel like it's one of those series that it's so popular and it's just cool to hate on the popular thing, because this thing has 55 million copies in circulation. It's got video games, it's got spin-offs, it had an anime movies, light novel, there was even a stage play. So the Seven Deadly Sins IP is very, very popular. And then after this, the writer actually went on to write a sequel to The Seven Deadly Sins, which I had never heard of prior to this. I don't know why. It is called The Four Nights of the Apocalypse, which we'll get into. Well, I guess spoilers for Seven Deadly Sins, and the premise of Four Nights of the Apocalypse. Or I guess I don't really even know the premise of that, but it follows Meliodas and Elizabeth's son, Tristan. So that is what the Four Nights of the Apocalypse is about. Regardless, I just wanted to talk today about my thoughts on the Seven Deadly Sins. Just kind of all of it, at least the things that I participated in. So back in like 2017, I got really into anime. Like prior to that, in high school, I had seen like the Pokemon anime growing up. I watched Yu-Gi-Oh growing up. But the first kind of anime I got into was Death Note. I really liked Death Note, so in like 2017, I started watching whatever was on Netflix at the time, and Seven Deadly Sins was on Netflix. I think it has season 1 and 2. It for sure had season 1, and then I think the second season was like 4 episodes of King and Deanne talking about their relationship. Regardless, when I first started watching this, I didn't really know what to expect, but it was really, really fun. My favorite part about Seven Deadly Sins is the characters, and I guess I'll just give you like a brief synopsis of what this story is about. So essentially, the Seven Deadly Sins are really powerful knights in this world of, I think it's Edinburgh is what it's called. So you've got the Seven Deadly Sins. You've got Meliodas, and then you've got Bon here, who is arguably my favorite character. Then you have Deanne the Giant. Then you have King, who's a fairy. He's the Fairy King. His name's Harlequin, but he goes by King. Then you have Merlin the Witch. You have Gother the Puppet, and then you have Escanor, who is a human as well. Like Bon and Escanor are humans. Escanor has the power of the sun, so he's one of the most strongest beings. He gets his power from the sun at 12 noon every day. He is at his strongest. Anyway, the story of this is, it has many twists, and that's the first thing I wanted to talk about, is the story and why I really like the story. So it starts out with the Holy Knights of Elizabeth is a princess of a kingdom, and the Holy Knights of her kingdom they're becoming bad. They're not great. They're not doing good things. So Elizabeth goes to find the Seven Deadly Sins. She finds Meliodas, and she's like, "Hey, can you help me find the rest of the Seven Deadly Sins, because my kingdom is not doing great. The Holy Knights are doing bad things." So we go on this huge journey of Meliodas and Elizabeth assembling the rest of the gamers. You can see Deanne here. She's the giantess. Oh, and then I forgot to mention this character, Hawk. He's like a pig demon thing that travels with Meliodas. Anyway, they go on an adventure to find all the rest of the 7 deadly sins. So they find Deanne. We learn more about all the different holy knights that are supposed to be protecting. Not all the holy knights are corrupt. Anyway, we meet Deanne, and then later on, they go break Bon out of prison, because he's in prison. Bon can't die, by the way, because he drank of the Fountain of Youth, which is also located in the Fairy Kingdom. So anyway, all of the 7 deadly sins get reunited. Then we learn about demons. We learn that the reason that the holy knights were becoming corrupt and evil was because the main holy knight was possessed by a demon, one of the 10 commandments. So about halfway through the story, we get introduced to new villains, which are demons instead of the holy knights. So that's when the 10 commandments show up, and they're essentially like the Akatsuki for Naruto. They're the baddest of the bad. They're also the demon race, which we come to find out that Meliodas used to be one of the 10 commandments. He was the leader of the 10 commandments, and he is also a part of the demon race. Throughout the entirety of this story, I've got several volumes of these, by the way, so I'm just going to keep going through them. And the other fun thing, too, is when you put them all together, the spines make a picture. That's kind of cool. Anyway, throughout the story, we get several different twists. I mean, you get the twist of the demon race showing up, the 10 commandments then become the villains. We learn more about Meliodas and Elizabeth and why their relationship is so good. The big twist of this story, which is really, you think it's going to be like this super action-packed shonen, good guys save the day, which it is, but the entire driving factor we learn for Meliodas specifically is him and Elizabeth have been cursed. So Elizabeth, she is part of the angel race, the goddess race. So she's essentially the light, and Meliodas is essentially the dark. And they're trying to end this holy war that happened 3,000 years ago, but they were cursed. So Meliodas was cursed with eternal life, where Meliodas can't die. Every time he dies, he just comes back to life. And then Elizabeth was cursed with reincarnation. So she dies tons and tons and tons of times, and she just keeps getting reincarnated. And Meliodas has to keep witnessing her dying over and over again. So it goes from this like kind of surface level action-packed good guys save the day to this deep love story that spans thousands of years. It's a very fun twist, and when I first learned about it in the anime, I was shocked to say the least. But then after going through and reading the manga after the anime, there's some foreshadowing, and you can see things happen and whatnot. So yeah, it's the story's actually really, really fun. I really, really like it. But what makes the story so good for me is all the characters, especially the 7 deadly sins. The characters and their relationships, man, they're deep, and it is fun learning about them. We learn about Deanne, who was the giantess. Her and King, when Deanne was little, King helped raise her and take care of her, and then they kind of ended up falling in love. We learn about Bon and how he drank from the Fountain of Youth. He ends up meeting King's sister, actually, Elaine, and he falls in love with her. Bon, for sure, is probably my favorite character, because on the surface level, he's kind of just like a cocky prick, but his character's very deep. Bon is a very caring character. He cares for his friends, and he always tries to do things with his friends in mind, especially after he drinks from the Fountain of Youth. He meets Elaine, King's sister, falls in love with her, and is always trying to just be a good support for all of his friends and people that he cares about. He fights for them. He tries to protect them in any way that he can. And I really like Bond's personality. He honestly is my favorite character. We later meet Merlin, and Merlin's got her character, she's very mysterious and kind of mystique throughout the entirety of it. And then the last 30 chapters, we learn more about Merlin, which is really, really cool. Escanor is really, really fun. He's a fun character that he's just out here to protect people. He fell in love with Merlin, and the guy's just a straight up G. He's a straight up gamer. Gother's got a huge character arc too, because he's a puppet trying to figure out what the heck he even is. That's really fun. He kind of goes on like a Tin Man journey because he doesn't have a heart. Elizabeth and Meliodas' relationship is really, really fun. It's really fun, stories like this for me, that you start zoomed in. Like, you're zoomed in, and as the story progresses, you zoom out and you get to see the bigger picture. I really love stories like that. I wanted to point out too that the art in this manga is so freaking good. Like, I really, really enjoy it. There are parts where it's like, yeah, that's a little dookie, like a little rushed or whatever, but for the most part, man, it's really, really fun. I do enjoy this artwork. I enjoy the art style as well. And the fight scenes are actually really, really cool. And in the anime, they're dope too. Once again, I started with the anime, and then after I finished the anime, I went through and I started reading the manga. One thing I did want to point out is the manga keeps going. I think it goes past where the anime ended, and honestly, I think it's good that the anime ended where it did. The manga kind of drags on, and it's kind of to me, it felt like a few different endings. But yeah, that's kind of just my initial thoughts with the 7 Deadly Sins. I don't think this is the greatest story ever created. Although I do love fantasy, I'm partial to that. I also gotta say, like I already mentioned, that this was one of the first anime/manga I got into. I'm not saying that has complete part to do with why I like it so much, but it definitely does play a part in it. I have read things that are better than this since then. I think Mushoku Tensei is one of those fantasy shows that I really enjoy, and I think is a little bit better than this. But I still really enjoy the 7 Deadly Sins, and in all reality, if I had to rate it, I'd probably give this entirety probably like a 7.5 or an 8. The characters are great. The twist of the story is super fun. I love the artwork. The anime is really good. The chemistry between the characters and their relationships is really fun. Seeing everybody interact with each other and how they treat one another. Like, Bon has a lot of respect for Hawk, and he calls him master. Meliodas and Bon treat each other like best friends, and the way that they like to communicate is they beat the hell out of each other. Bon and King don't have the greatest relationship in the beginning. Bon kind of teases King. King's very unsure of himself and very timid. But as he progresses throughout the story, he gets confidence in himself, and he ends up becoming the fairy king that he was meant to be. And there's so many details that I'm leaving out just because there's a lot to this. There's 41 volumes and 346 chapters. So this is a very big story. There's lots of side characters too that get tons and tons of screen time. You learn about different holy knights. You learn about Meliodas' relationship with Elizabeth's dad. You learn about all of the different lives that Elizabeth has lived, that Meliodas has lived through with her. And you learn about how many times he's seen her die over and over and over again. So it's one of those stories, like I said, that has such a good twist, and then really kind of gives you a gut punch, just to build up to all of it. A lot of characters get super cool moments too when we're going through everybody's character arcs, and it's not like they're doing character one at a time. It's everybody's progressing and growing alongside each other. We learn about everybody's power levels. There's training arcs, love stories, relationships unfold. People die in this too. They don't shy away from killing people. Honestly, this really is such a fun ride. And the fact that it's 346 chapters, like I already mentioned, it goes on a little too long, but at the same time, like, there's enough content here that we get to learn about a lot of characters, and there's a lot of character development. It's really fun. I mean, we learn. My favorite part in the story was when we see Meliodas as a completely just crushed soul because of Elizabeth's curse and having to watch her die over and over and over again. He's over it. It honestly reminds me of, I don't know if you've seen Steins Gate, then you kind of know what I'm talking about with Okabe. I'm not going to spoil that, but yeah, Steins Gate, similar things happen. So it's super cool. It's very unique on its take. I love the power system. I love that knights aren't just these weak fodder, but knights are actually very skilled. You've got all the different demons, you've got lots of different fights, lots of different characters, side characters. Some of the demons get arcs too, where you learn about them, and you learn about the war and why the war started and who actually is the bad guys. So it just takes you on such a ride, and I really enjoyed it. I've got I think I've got 7 of these omnibus volumes. It goes up to volume 21, I believe. So I'm still 20 volumes short of completing it. I didn't know if I was going to complete collecting this. At one point I was going to sell it, but after finishing the manga, because I stopped buying volumes when Right Stuff went down. I guess Crunchyroll just kind of bought it and cannibalized it. So you can still buy tons of manga for cheap there. But anyway, I don't know if I'll complete this. I might. After finishing the manga, it kind of reignited my love for the series and reminded me why I really like it. But yeah, it's really fun. So I honestly would recommend, if you haven't read or watched The 7 Deadly Sins, I would. I do believe that the anime ends quite a bit shorter than where the manga is. The manga continues on. I don't even know how much longer past the anime. And it's been so long since I watched the anime. I recently started reading this probably like a year or two ago. I started buying these omnibuses whenever they started coming out. I was buying them as they were getting released. I got to Omnibus Volume 7, and that's kind of where I stopped. But I finished reading The 7 Deadly Sins online. And yeah, it's fun. I don't know if I will read the Four Nights of the Apocalypse. I might. Maybe I'll read a couple chapters, a volume of it, just see if I'm into it. Because as much as I do and did and do like this story, I once again kind of got burnt out at the end. I think it should have ended a lot. It should have ended many chapters before where it did. It had a very fun, conclusive ending, but I can also kind of see why they added extra to it just to finish off another one of the character arcs. Because Merlin, she's there throughout the story, but we get her kind of resolving character arc at the end. And it's pretty cool. There's some cool moments in there, but was it necessary? I don't really know. If Merlin's your favorite character, then you'll enjoy reading it past that. But that is pretty much it. That is my thoughts on The 7 Deadly Sins, and I think you should read it. You should check it out. You'd probably like it. You get to see lots of cool artwork, fun stories. But let me know your guys' thoughts down below in the comments. Do you like 7 Deadly Sins? Is it overrated? Do people meme on it just because they like to hate it? What are your guys' thoughts? Let me know in the comments below, but that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, keep it rad.